Looking for a new career? Welcome to Do HVAC Training Service Center in North Charleston. Enroll today in our comprehensive HVAC training hands-on field experience-based program, covering troubleshooting, maintenance, installation, and more on various HVAC systems and ductwork. We offer EPA and NAEP preparation and testing, along with various certifications. Enjoy payment options. Achieve certification in under 5 months. Enroll now for your new journey of skill development and career advancement. Log on to dewhvactrainingsc.com to inquire.
It wouldn't be the holiday season if there wasn't candy, right? Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht.
Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the German football podcast from the Football Grad Network. I'm your host, Bryce Dunn, and joining me, as always, is Chris Williams. Chris, how have you been?
Well, I was all right, Bryce, but I'm pretty tired now, to be honest, because we've had a Monday night game, and not only can I not be doing with Monday night games, I can't be doing with them when they're delayed by 15 minutes for a ridiculous refereeing decision. So I'm probably not in the best of moods. How are you?
Oh, I'm not too bad, actually. It was a nice weekend. Sunshine finally arrived in the UK, which made everyone a little bit more pleasant and upbeat. But yes, I think we can all agree that we're not a massive fan of these Monday night games, are we? For a few reasons. But joining Chris and I this week, as always, but in Germany, yes, rather than across the water, is Manuel Veth. Manu, how was your travels?
It's good. I'm a little tired. Monday night games aren't great, especially if you arrived at 7 o'clock from a transnational flight and you haven't slept at all. So I'm a little jet lagged. I'm excited to finally get sleep. I think it's been over 30 hours. So yeah, if I don't make any sense, that's the lack of sleep talking. But yeah, I'm pretty excited to be back home in Germany.
Good to hear. So yes, this could be a rather interesting pod with people being tired and jet lagged. So let's see how it goes. I'm sure we'll be fine. But guys, the big topic in Germany this week is not on the field, but off the field. And we've talked for quite some time now about the different coaches that are going to go to clubs like Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich have finally found their man. And yes, it's Niko Kovac, who has had a fantastic season with Eintracht Frankfurt. It seems like they have opened up the release clause with 2.2 million euros. And yes, it seems like they've got their man, a former player of theirs, born and bred in Berlin, even though he's Croatian. Chris, what's your opinion on Niko Kovac, the new Bayern boss?
I think it's a very good signing for him. I know there's a lot of people who are a little bit sceptical, but we have to see what he did with Frankfurt. Obviously, they were a club down in the doldrums. He's taken over. He's taken them to, I think, a better level. I think they were unlucky last season. They had a very good start, but then they had a bit of a poor second half of the season. But crucially, as I think I said last week or maybe the week before, he's learned from those problems. And this season, Eintracht Frankfurt currently, end of match day 30, they're in 7th place. So they're looking at a UEFA, well, that's how tied I am. They said UEFA Cup, looking at a Europa League slot for next season with the Pokal Europa League position will be handed back to the league. So currently that's Eintracht Frankfurt. I mean, they may be a little bit disappointed they won't get into Champions League, but I think Niko Kovac understands the club, understands the area, obviously fluent speaker in German for obvious reasons, as you just said. So yeah, I think it's a really good signing. Probably not the best time to announce it though, but I'm sure Manu will chip in. Probably Bayern's hand were forced because it was leaked to Christian Falk of Sport Bild, who's had some really good exclusives lately, namely Niko Kovac and Leon Goretzka. So yeah, it's probably not an ideal situation, but we have to wonder where this came from, because Kovac said in his press conference it didn't come from him.
Oh, did you know? It must come from somewhere though. So I assume someone at Bayern thought the time was right. I think what happened, Chris, is that a lot of people in Munich got a little nervous because players were asking questions on who's going to be the new coach, and I think players want to know, right, when they go into the new season, who's going to be the new coach. So I think what happened there is that the club, I'm pretty sure this came from Bayern, and that they just basically leaked it and said, look, this is what we've done. We offered a contract to Kovac. We triggered the release clause of 2.2 million euros. Both Bayern and Kovac are claiming that, of course, the way this was done was all correct, because basically the release clause was there and it was done all quickly, according to their version. But then, of course, the Süddeutsche Zeitung, which is the newspaper based here in Munich, released an article saying that Bayern told Kovac last year to put in a release clause in his contract for Bayern exclusively. And that's, of course, raised some eyebrows. And then on top of that, there was apparently a meeting at the gas station. For those who are not familiar to German football, meetings at gas stations are a big thing. Chris, you love gas stations for the schnitzel, right? Apparently players and coaches and agents do as well, so they love to meet there and discuss player contracts.
Schnitzel, Kaffee mit Milchpizza, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So apparently you're not the only one who's fans of that. Player agents seems to like that too. So yeah, there was apparently a meeting a couple of weeks ago. Kovac, of course, said at the press conference that he spoke of a dynamic that he woke up in the morning, he had no clear what he's going to do, and then there was an offer made by Munich, and he accepted that offer, and he called it. There was a dynamic that got into the day that he did not expect that day, but I suspect the decision has been, it has been talked about among the agent, Kovac's agent, Kovac and Bayern and Hoeneß and Rummenigge for quite some time, and they just let the cat out of the bag now because it's mid-April. And Bayern need to have a coach, right? So that of course doesn't leave it a happy situation for Frankfurt. But yeah, that's just how it is. I guess in football things can go really quick, and people don't always tell the truth.
Yeah, Manu, is it a bit of a reoccurring incident that Sport Bild release these kind of things? It seems like it happens all too often.
Yeah, Bayern are a Bild club. There's Bild that don't have very good sources for all the clubs in Germany. Most of the time, Kicker is the magazine that is better informed, and then of course the local papers in the various regions all over Germany. Bild is often placed the second fiddle to those regional papers, but Bayern are a Bild club. This goes back to the times of Franz Beckenbauer, who was a Bild columnist. Same with Lothar Matthäus, of course, and Bild has always had an ear inside the dressing room at Bayern and inside the boardroom, and yeah, that's just how it is, so that's why Bild gets those quick informations, and sometimes, Bild gets information that make Bayern angry because they shouldn't have it. But sometimes Bayern also use that connection to force the hands of to make decisions happen. I mean, we talked in great length about the Leon Goretzka transfer and the fact that the other clubs were starting to be interested in Leon Goretzka, and then whoops, Bayern just released the fact that they had a verbal agreement with him, right, and basically sealed the deal on the transfer. So yeah, they are very much a Bild club, Bryce, and therefore you get information like that leaked through Sport Bild or Bild München or the various Bild outlets all over Germany.
And Chris, it turns out that, there's a bit of a feud going on, or a word spoken between the set of boards or directors. Freddie Bobic was not amused by Bayern taking their head coach, as you can imagine. But Honers quickly replied and said, well, Frankfurt, now have plenty of time to find their new coach, ahead of the start of next season. But what's your take on all of this?
Probably 6 and 2 threes is probably the easiest way to do it. If I was a member of the Eintracht Frankfurt board, I would be pretty peeved that my manager being poached now when the club's in the midst of a Champions League fight. I think that's probably pretty poor. But as Manu's already said, Bayern are under pressure to let their players know who the manager is. So anyone that doesn't want to be there can move on, or give some stability to those who want to stay and know what they can expect, because we've got a World Cup coming up. So if any of those players play outside of their ability, all of a sudden they'll have teams from Spain and England sniffing around them, and albeit they're at Bayern Munich, I'm sure if they are offered quite a bit of cash, some of the older guys, they may take it. So it's probably worth Bayern getting their line in the sand now that it's Niko Kovac. But I can see why Frankfurt weren't happy at all, especially as they then went out and, they were hammered 4-1 to Leverkusen. Now, I don't think you can say that is direct response to Niko Kovac being named as Bayern Munich manager, but it doesn't help, does it? And it now pushes them outside the European places for the Bundesliga. So I think it could have damaged Frankfurt. Maybe in the short term. I would hope for their sake that they managed to get into Europa League places, because their football's deserved it this season. So, yeah, I can understand it from both sides. But if you're Eintracht Frankfurt manager and even a supporter, you'd be pretty, nearly said something I shouldn't then, but you wouldn't be very happy about it, put it that way.
Yeah, it created a bit of a circus though, right, Chris? Did you see the pictures before the Eintracht Frankfurt Leverkusen match? And there was hundreds, is of course a bit of an exaggeration, but it looked like that. Hundreds of photographers around Niko Kovac taking a picture. That is an incredible distraction ahead of a game, and all of a sudden the entire dressing room is talking about, well, our manager is leaving to Bayern.
Yeah, and I think we saw that the back end of Peter Stoger's time at Cologne, didn't we? There was just constant photographers, and also with Peter Bosz. So it is distracting, and it must take the player's mind off the game. And I don't think it helped, and probably contributed in a small way to their hammering at Leverkusen.
Yeah, because this was maybe, again, it may be a little exaggeration, but this could have been the biggest game in the last 20 years, because you win that game and, all of a sudden they're the team, possibly in a Champions League spot, right? Instead of Leverkusen. So that was a big game for them, and now they're looking in from the outside, and cup game this week as well, and then possibly a cup final against Bayern. All of this doesn't help at all.
No, and they would have been fourth, so Leverkusen would have slipped down, Dortmund would have gone to third, and Eintracht Frankfurt would have gone fourth. So you would have expected them to be in a dominant position to maintain that fourth place, but it's still really, really close. Dortmund are on 51 and are playing dreadful football, which we'll get onto in a moment. But you would think that Frankfurt have probably got it within them to leapfrog Leipzig into fifth, and then if they can maintain that fifth on the next match day, we will have 3 days left after that one. So match days 32, 33 and 34, and you never know.
Do you think possibly because he obviously knows he's leaving, the fans know he's leaving, the players know he's leaving, do you think it's going to be hard, Manu, for them all to get driven for this? Or do you think Kovac may even just think, what would be great to go out with a cup win for them, or even a cup final day for them, and maybe he sees that as his priority, as he's got eyes on Bayern?
Oh, wouldn't that be something? A cup final, Bayern against Frankfurt. The cup finals are full of stories like that. You go back in the 70s, where Günter Netzer famously substituted himself onto the field because it was his last game for Gladbach and he was moving on to Real Madrid. Then you, of course, have the story with Lothar Matthäus, who missed a penalty in the cup final against Bayern, and then the next season played at Bayern, right? And people to this day say he missed that penalty on purpose, even though I don't think that was actually the case. And I think in more recent history, you have Jürgen Klopp's last match, Dortmund, of course, a final against Wolfsburg that was lost. And then Mats Hummels, the cup final against Bayern in a match where he was taken off with, I believe, 15 minutes to go by Thomas Tuchel, which was up to this day is still a controversial issue as well. So, the cup final is full of stories like that, and it'd be a fascinating cup final if the final is Bayern against Frankfurt. There is a possibility. I mean, the two cup games, the semifinals, the previews are up on fußballstadt.com. If in case you're wondering, they are this week, and Bayern are playing Leverkusen and Frankfurt are playing Schalke, and I think there's a good chance we'll see exactly that final. And imagine the storyline, right? The final between Bayern and Kovac, because that's what it's going to be all about. It's going to be a media circus, and it's going to be all about that question: how Kovac is Kovac, prohibiting his new club to win the historic second treble. All these questions, a lot of questions, which of course are going to be silly because they always are. I think when you coach and you play for a certain club until the very end, you always give it everything, right? I mean, this is something maybe you have to have played the game to understand this, but when you're on the field, you want to win. But these questions are there anyways, right? And they're such a fabric of the game that we almost turn it into a little bit of a soap opera.
Yeah, it just adds to the drama, I suppose, doesn't it? Even though it is very true, it does turn a little soap opera-esque. But Chris, if we just go to you to just talk a little bit more about what Bayern can expect from Kovac on the field. I mean, this season in the Bundesliga, we have seen Eintracht be a rather compact unit, but he is a big fan of wingers, especially in Arjen Robben and Frank Ribery, which we've heard before when he said, I'm a big fan of wide players. When I watch players like Robben and Ribery play, my heart goes a little bit faster. So does this mean that they're going to feature for Bayern under him in the next year or two? And what type of tactics do you see them possibly using under him?
Well, I can't see them playing too big a role, probably on a similar scale to this season, maybe a little less, because obviously they're aging and Bayern will want to blood new players through. But what Bayern can expect from Kovac is that he will play the right way. Now, I doubt he would take the way that he's made this Eintracht Frankfurt team play and adapt that to Bayern Munich. He will more than likely go in and play the Bayern Munich way, which is one of a few ways. But at Frankfurt, he's predominantly played, as you said, is quite a flat 3-5-2, and that's occasionally gone to a 4 at the back. And very recently, the last run of games in which they picked up a couple of wins and a couple of defeats and the odd draw, he's gone for a 3-1-4-2, which is a little dissimilar to what we've seen at Bayern, especially since Heinkes took over. They like to play with 4 at the back, and generally, well, for the majority of the season, he's played 4-3-3. So I don't think you can look at what he's done at Frankfurt and say, yeah, that's going to be the blueprint, because anyone that goes to Bayern Munich, there's clubs all around the world. There's a few of them. Bayern Munich's one of them. Real Madrid's another. You play the way that the club expects you to play. So you don't come in and revolutionize that. Otherwise, you end up out the door quite quickly, like Louis van Gaal. So I wouldn't expect anything rudimentary or something that's going to blow your mind away, Bryce. But what I would expect is that if it's not working well, he can fix it up very quickly because he's very tactically astute. So, for instance, if they aren't playing with wingers and it needs it very quickly, he will make that adaptation. So I wouldn't think that it's going to be a new dawn for Bayern. I would say that they play the type of football that we're used to, but it will just be in steady hands.
Yes, most certainly. And Manu, just before we come off the subject of Niko Kovac, can we possibly think of any cons for this transfer from Eintracht to Bayern? I mean, are there any flaws do you see in it? I mean, he's obviously got Bundesliga experience. He's played for Bayern before. He's grew up in Germany. I mean, what do you see as possible cons, if any?
Want to be sure you always look your best? The Reflections LED Rose Gold Makeup Mirror from Conair makes it easy, with all the features you need to groom and apply makeup with precision. Lifetime LED lighting won't ever dim or diminish, no replacement bulbs needed. One-time magnification provides a full view, or 10 times magnification for close-up tweezing and details. Designed with a beautiful rose gold finish, the mirror rotates at 360 degrees, with a 7.5-inch viewing surface to attend to every feature. Makes a great gift. Go to Conair.com for the Reflections LED Rose Gold Makeup Mirror now.
It wouldn't be the holiday season if there wasn't candy, right? Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
It's the tricky thing for me is this is going to be his second Bundesliga job. We're talking about a coach who's coached two seasons and a few matches in the Bundesliga, and that's not a lot for taking on the Bayern job. I think that's maybe a con is the inexperience, and I think it makes sense that Hermann, the assistant coach who works really well with Heinkes, is staying on to basically help him a little bit in that regard. So I think what Bayern have done here, Bryce, is that they don't want to have a second Jurgen Klopp scenario. I've learned that that they very, very much tried to sign Jurgen Klopp for next summer, and basically it wasn't possible. Jurgen Klopp wasn't available, and Liverpool would have not let him go by any means. So that was actually their number one option, and they didn't do that. It wasn't possible for them. So they quickly moved on to who they believe could possibly one day to turn out to be the next Jurgen Klopp. And I mean, the story is famous that Uli Hoeneß back in the day wanted Jurgen Klopp, and Rummenigge went for Klinsmann, and well, the rest is history. I think they really wanted to avoid that this could happen a second time. So they went for the inexperienced, a little bit more inexperienced coach, rather than going with a more inexperienced option. And that is maybe the only con. But I think overall, I'm very much agree with Chris. There's the question, of course, a lot of people compare Bayern's style of play to that of Barcelona. I assure you it's much more flexible than that. Bayern have incorporated styles of Barcelona, but they also play a little bit of Borussia Dortmund, right? That typical gegenpressing style that you see in German football. And I think that Kovac can bring that to the club, and he can bring a lot of his own elements similar to, how Diego Simeone plays at Atletico Madrid. And that's a side, of course, that wins games the hardy way at times, even though they're the underdog. And Bayern is a massive club. I think that Bayern are one of the 3 biggest clubs on this planet, but at the same time they are also not a club that will not go out and spend 200 million on a new player. They just won't do that. So they need to do it a bit different. They need to do it more similar to Atletico rather than Real Madrid, even though they have the same power in terms of attraction. So I think this makes a lot of sense, and I think this is going to be a fascinating one to watch. This is the kind of thing where I'm looking forward to the new season, and I'm just intrigued, and I'm not quite sure yet how it's going to all work out.
Yes, indeed. Well, we did talk that there was a lot of happenings to go on off the pitch in the Bundesliga in the preseason, including 2 of the biggest sides, which obviously Bayern have got their man. It'll be interesting to see who comes in and out of the club, obviously. But to talk about their closest rivals in Borussia Dortmund, another club that their coach has been, the coaching spot has been long suspected to not be the man in the position at the moment, and that's Peter Stoger. And I feel that there's going to be a few little rants and harsh words to come up in this part. So if you're a Stoger fan, probably turn off. But we're going to talk about the Revierderby. We've seen that happen on Sunday. That was Schalke at home to Borussia Dortmund. Schalke sitting in second, Dortmund sitting in third. We were talking it up about how close this game was going to be. Schalke came out 2-0 winners. Dominic Tedesco will be delighted, especially with that Naldo thunderbolt in 82 minutes to seal the deal. We're going to have to go to Chris, I think, on this one. Chris, as we always say, Dortmund, a side close to your hearts. What was your take on the game? Is there any even positives that you can possibly say on the Borussia Dortmund side?
Well, they didn't get beat 3-0. That's probably one positive. But Bryce, if you're a Dortmund fan, there was very few positives to take from this game. However, if you're a Schalke fan, there was a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was still quite a lot of Schalke fans in Gelsenkirchen drunk still today on Monday evening as we record this, because not only did they beat the neighbours, I did the match report for Fußballstat.com, which is on there. I said that they powered past them, and my opening quote was, it was an afternoon that cemented a shift in the balance of power in the Ruhr region, and I quite believe that. It is going to be a season where Schalke finish above Borussia Dortmund. I cannot see them making up that 4-point gap now in the points that are left, especially Schalke will be riding high, give or take a Pokal exit this coming week tomorrow. I think they will be absolutely fine. So it's back to what is going to be the problem for Dortmund. And the problem for Dortmund is that they're playing horrendous football at the minute. Some of the passage of plays, I mean, I remember before Bosch left, we said about Dortmund that they didn't have a style. They didn't look like they knew what they were doing. They looked like a team who were lost. And I saw that on the weekend, on Sunday. It was a horrendous game to watch if you're a Borussia Dortmund fan. If you're a neutral, it will have been a fantastic game to watch because it was, end-to-end football at times. But the majority of it was blue to yellow football. So on the whole, Schalke very, very deserved of their win. They just harassed and pressed and harangued Dortmund into mistakes. The first goal is a mistake. The second, you can argue you shouldn't be giving fouls away in that area, but don't take anything away from Naldo because it's a wonderful strike. But Konoplyanka was a pain in Dortmund's side from the first minute to the last minute, and he was deservedly my man of the match. And I think to talk about this game in what have Dortmund done wrong would probably be disrespectful to Schalke, because Schalke have had an excellent season and they just steamrolled it past them. So for me, Bryce, this game was all about how well Schalke have done this season, and for me, how they've shifted that balance of power.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that we need to talk about both sides. Let's talk about Dortmund then. Let's get that out of the way. And as you said, Chris, I watched the game and they were terrible. They were absolutely terrible. There was no passion. It seemed like there was no idea on the pitch. And I just think there's different rumors coming out, isn't there, that Peter Stoker could possibly stay next year. But I think, personally, this is me going off on a little bit of a rant, that if you're a Dortmund fan, you're either going through the motions at the moment, going, he's going to be gone at the end of the season, and keeping your fingers crossed, or I would be absolutely disgusted. I think he sat on that bench, and when he conceded both goals, he looked like he just didn't care. Chris, you've mentioned that you think he has no ideas. I don't think he
didn't care. That would probably be a step too far if he was there. If he was on this call now, Bryce, he'd probably be like, I do care. I personally think he's run out of ideas. He cannot get Dortmund firing the way he wants to. He's got the body language that he had in his final weeks in Cologne, where he couldn't get them doing what they wanted to do. And you see it so often with managers on the bench. When they run out of ideas, they go completely quiet and unemotional. And that's pretty much what I saw, especially the last 15, 20 minutes of that game. If you compare it to someone, and if you can only compare it to who was at Dortmund last year, Thomas Tuchel, when things weren't going well, he was at the edge of that technical area going mad. You could see him gesticulating to the players, you need to get tighter, you need to pull out, the ball needs to go here. Peter Stoger, unfortunately, hasn't got that. Now, either that's not in his nature, or I believe he genuinely doesn't have a clue, as in he doesn't know how to make it better. Obviously, he has a clue about management. He wouldn't be managing in the Bundesliga if he didn't. So I'm not saying he hasn't got a clue, in inverted commas, as in he's clueless. What I'm saying is he's run out of ideas for this Dortmund side. I don't think he's been helped by players, but then he's not. I don't think he's been able to motivate the players. If you look at who he started in midfield, he started Dahoud and Sahin. I don't think those two work together very well. When Dahoud came off, it wasn't for Julian Weigl, which would have been better in that area. Michy Batshuayi was isolated up top, so they played 4-2-3-1. He was completely isolated. I think Pulisic started to play around about 82 minutes, which is no good. Maximilian Philipp, who I'm a massive fan of, didn't have a particularly good game, came off at half time. And Schmelzer, well, yeah, he had a stinker, so he needs the captain. So it's hard, and yeah, none of the back line came out with any sort of I can say any sort of pleasure, any sort of thing that will bring them any sort of solitude, because they just played that bad. I thought the midfield five were horrendous, and they were far too deep, which left Batshuayi up top isolated. Dortmund's game went bad to worse because he was taken off with I suspect is a broken ankle or some sort of fracture on the bone of his ankle. So his season's pretty much over, and he probably won't be playing in the World Cup. So, that's the end of a very bad day for Dortmund, because Batshuayi came in to replace Aubameyang's goals. He started to do that. So it's all going to be on the shoulders of either Royce, Götze, or Philip, which is a big ask, unless they bring in Isaac. But again, he's a very young guy. He may thrive under the pressure. He may not.
Yeah, Manu, if we go to you, do you see Stoker possibly being there next season? And what's your opinion? Do you think Favre is going to be the best man to come into this role? It feels like we've been talking about this several weeks in a row now, but it's just going to keep going until, Dortmund, I suppose, release what they've decided to do next season.
Yeah, I don't think they actually know what they're going to do yet, Bryce. And that's the only reason why Stöger is still considered a possibility for next year. Now, I think the issue is, if you do go with Stöger, you will have to basically tear down that entire side, right? And build them up in his liking, because Chris is quite right. He's out of ideas, because I think the side doesn't fit his football philosophy one bit, and as a result, you cannot keep working with this manager, right? Because if you wanted to keep working with this manager, you would have to tear down the side. Now, they will have to make some substantial changes anyways. But we're talking maybe 4 or 5 new players for key areas, like a goalkeeper, maybe a defender, a midfielder, and a striker, right? Maybe that's going to be Michy Batshuayi, maybe it's going to be someone else. I think there's a lot of names floating around right now of players that could possibly come in to kind of change the side and to give it a little bit of a different face. One name that's, for example, and I think this is maybe a player that they could very well need, someone who could bring a lot of leadership to the side, is Jonas Hector, who's strongly linked to Borussia Dortmund. This deal is not done, but he's strongly linked to Borussia Dortmund. I heard that they're basically just waiting for Köln to be relegated to make this to announce this deal. So this would be a player, of course, who could bring in a lot of experience and would be very important for Dortmund. To bring in that experience, maybe bring in a bit of character, because this is something that I'm missing. But I think if they want to keep Stöger, Bryce, the rebuild job would be too big. And I think it'd be better to bring in a coach who fits this team tactically, right? That's maybe the biggest task right now. And I think Lucien Favre would be an excellent choice. I mean, when you look at the way Gladbach played under him, except for that 5-game spell that they had in his last season, where they were completely derailed for 5 games in a row. Lucien Favre did excellent work with Gladbach, and he does excellent work in France right now with Nice, and he's a coach that plays, I think, the kind of football that fans in Dortmund expect. The kind of football that both attracted both me and Chris to this club to watch them primarily. And I think that's the expectations there, and that's the that's why I think he's the favorite, but I don't think he is necessarily, it's not 100% sure that he will be the guy. I think, and maybe the last thing on him, like Kovac, he has an exit clause for the summer. And that will, of course, make it easier for Dortmund to complete the signing if they wish to do so.
I suppose that puts the question to both of you fellas. We'll start with Chris, though. Do you see Dortmund getting into one of the Champions League spots for next season? You know, they've got a tough run in, as we mentioned the other week. I mean, they're going to be taking on Bayer Leverkusen next, who they're joint on points with. But then they've got Werder Bremen, who's been very strong, of recent times. Mainz, who have got a lot to play for. And then finishing off with Hoffenheim, at home, which is going to be a very tough game as well.
I might hang my hat on this, Bryce, and say that if they get turned over on the weekend, this coming weekend, and the results go against them, as in the other clubs leapfrog them, or get close to them, I think they could have a problem. If they lose this weekend, they would stay on 41. Leipzig, if they were to win, they go to 50. And Hoffenheim would go to 49. So I think this is a really big game for them, because if they lose this, that's 2 on the bounce, and then they start to worry then. And I think if you get that worry, then you can lose the next game, and then you could be looking at a 4 or 5 game losing streak. So it is absolutely key for Borussia Dortmund that they win this weekend, and they win convincingly. So I think it's a big ask for them. And I think they've got one of the hardest run-ins to come. So if they do it, they will be worthy of their Champions League place next year, because they've had a poor season and they've recovered it in a run-in. But my only fear is that the way they've been playing this season, without some sort of substantial injection of talent over the summer, is they will be in the same situation as they were this season, is that they will just fall out at the group stage.
Manuel, how do you feel? Do you think Dortmund will get over the line and get into the Champions League for next season?
Yeah, this is actually a question I put to Twitter, and only 46% said yes, they will do it. I say yes, they will do it. They will finish. They will finish in the top 4, and they will lay the foundation on the weekend and win that game, because they have been very good at losing a key game and coming back from that. I reckon they'll need, from the run and 4 games left, they'll need 7 points to get the job done. I think no club has ever failed to reach the Champions League with 60 points, so that would be 9 points. I guess they could do that as well. So I think yes, they will do it. But Chris is 100% right. Without the injection of talent, they are going to be very much in the same situation next year again. And that would be a shame, because they are a big club and they have laid themselves a very strong foundation over the last few years with Klopp and Tuchel, and they need to get back to that, because this is a side that we expect to challenge Bayern for the title, not to sit around in 4th and 3rd spot, trying to survive and stay in the Champions League spot.
Yes, indeed. It's going to be an interesting run-in for Borussia Dortmund, and then the goings-on in the summer will also be equally as interesting, I feel. But as Chris mentioned, we do have to talk about Schalke. They were outstanding in the Revierderby. I think we can all agree to that. Naldo especially, with that goal, kind of just topped it off, will we say. But Dominic Tedesco has done a fantastic job, and it looks like they'll end up in the Champions League, doesn't it, Manu? I mean, credit to Tedesco. We did mention earlier in the season that the side does have quite a bit of talent in it, but he's done a fantastic job, and almost out of nowhere.
Yeah, and I still think that Schalke will need to add a few things in the summer, because I think the side is overperforming a bit. I'm not 100% sold yet on the Tedesco bus in Germany. Yes, he's getting the results, and he's this in very difficult conditions, but it's the kind of thing that if they don't get the players that they need to strengthen certain parts of the side. in order to keep this going for next year, right? Because I suspect that the likes of Leverkusen and Dortmund will have better years next year. I reckon Leipzig will make substantial investments into their side as well, and that will create a very different dynamic in this league. I reckon that a bunch of the clubs will see if Bayern stumble under the new coach, and if Schalke will have to show intent in the summer and make some significant signings in order to be part of that pack of teams that could possibly challenge Bayern should they have a weakness. Should it prove that Kovac is maybe not the right man.
And Chris, I suppose, it's due for all of us to sing Tedesco's praises and just say what a fantastic job he's done. But would you agree with Manu that they're going to need quite a few additions, on their starting 11 that they currently have to maybe even maintain this kind of thing, especially when the sides run them are going to be looking to compete and maybe even go further next year?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Manu that they will need to bolster that side because obviously Goetzka's going to be going, Meyer will be going, although he didn't play on the weekend. But they'll need some sort of injection in that midfield area. Although Konoplyanka played exceptionally well, that has been few and far between at times this season. So either he needs to make sure he gets to that level every single week, or they need to bring in somebody else. I know they've got the likes of Weston McKennie, who's very, very good, and he's a potential future star, but he's still not exciting me as much as maybe he should do. And then if you look at what they've got in reserve, it's probably not going to push them on four fronts because they will be playing Champions League football as well. So that adds another dynamic, as we've seen Leipzig failed spectacularly at times to cope with that. Hence why they're a lot further down the league than they were this season. So it is going to be crucial that they recruit and retain in the right areas. But as regard Domenico Tedesco, I will not put any of my recommendations on him because I said he'd be sacked by match day 5, and here he is, probably going to finish the season in second.
Yes, indeed. That seems like so long ago, doesn't it? But guys, let's before we go away from the possibility of or talking about the possibility of a Champions League spot, let's talk about if Borussia Dortmund are challenging, well, so are Bayer Leverkusen, so are RB Leipzig. You could even maybe go as far as maybe Hoffenheim or Eintracht, even though it'd be a bit of a long shot. But Chris, who do you think after this match day, with Bayern and Schalke looking nailed on, who do you think is going to join them in the next two spots?
Oh, wow. Well, I would like to say it would be Dortmund and Leverkusen because I think they should give the strongest challenge in Europe next season. However, I wouldn't put it past Leipzig to sneak back in there. I think it might be just beyond Hoffenheim at the moment. But you don't know if the results go their way. They could also get back in. That's how tight it is. But I would say with my hat, I hang my hat on something, it'd be Bayern, Schalke, Leverkusen, Dortmund, potentially Leipzig sneaking in on the very last day. But I'm not 100% sure, Bryce, is the full answer.
I'm looking furiously through all the fixtures that the sides have, and it is going to be very tight. Manu, who would you say is probably going to join Schalke and Bayern Munich?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Leverkusen and Dortmund. I say that because those two sides might actually make a big step towards that on the weekend, or one of them could potentially, because you see Leipzig and Hoffenheim are playing each other on Saturday, right? Possibly one of our matches of the weekend. And then you have Dortmund play Leverkusen, that's the very same day. And if those two games end in a draw, the gap remains at 4 points, and you have one match less. Now if Leipzig and Hoffenheim play a draw and one of the teams on top of them win, that side will be through. I'm nailed down the spot. I am pretty sure that, Leipzig the problem with Leipzig for me this year has been, and I mean we saw this in the Europa League this week, where they are very good one game and then they just completely fall apart in the next game, and this is something that I think is going to, in the run, and is maybe going to trouble them, that they just don't have the consistency. At this point, they have to collect 4 more points out of 4 games than Borussia Dortmund to get past them, and they have the worst goal differential, so it's actually 5 points, and that's quite a lot in just 4 games. So I'm not sure I see that happening. I think that the top 4 is very much cemented the way it is.
Yeah, in my opinion, after looking at the fixtures, I would probably agree with that, Manu. I think that 4 points at the moment between Dortmund and Leipzig might just be a big enough cushion for Dortmund to even fall, but still get through. Guys, let's talk a little bit about this Monday night game, which we've just seen happen. It was, a bit of a battle for that final relegation spot. As we've seen, Cologne seem to be all but down. Hamburg down as well. But it leaves that playoff position in 16th. This Monday, we've seen Mainz win 2-0 at home to Freiburg. Not without controversy, but it does see them, it being as close as ever. In fact, Mainz have just overtaken Freiburg after this occasion. Chris, let's talk a little bit about the controversy, and then I suppose we need to talk about who we think may actually go down, or go into the playoff, will we say, and then with the possibility of going down. What happened during this game? You said that there was a penalty, but players were brought back onto the pitch. What's happened here?
Yeah, it was what we needed. Oh, not me. I didn't need it. What the DFL needed and the Bundesliga needed was to get through the rest of this season without any VAR controversies, and unfortunately they didn't get that on a Monday night, which isn't a popular night for football anyway. They got probably the strangest VAR decision of the season. I'm going to say this probably beats I think, was it the one in either the MLS or it might have been one in the South American leagues where they went to VAR, and because someone had a flag, they weren't in front of the camera, they weren't able to use it. That's a problem. But tonight, Mainz, the halftime whistle went and the players left the pitch. And just before the referee left off the pitch, he touched his finger to his ear, and then had to run down the tunnel and blow the whistle and get the players out. And he went and did a video review and he gave a penalty after the whistle. Now, obviously, you can only bring in VAR once the whistle has gone, but the whistle had gone for half time, and majority of the Freiburg players were down the tunnel and gone. So we had about a 6 or 7 minute wait. The players came back on. The penalty was taken. The Blazers scored, and then the referee blew his whistle, and they all went back in at half time. So it was chaotic, and it was freakish, and it was a farce for me. Mainly because if you look at the replay, the whole reason that VAR is brought in, VAR's brought in not to disrupt the flow of the game. It's brought in for clear and obvious mistakes only. I don't know if that is an intentional handball that you'll see it. If anyone looks back, it doesn't look a clear and obvious mistake to me. It's one of those handballs that some referees give and some referees don't. It wasn't a clear handball for me. His hand didn't look in an unnatural position, nor did it look in a natural position. So it wasn't clear and evident mistake for me. So therefore, VAR shouldn't have been used. And it certainly shouldn't have been used when the teams are halfway down the tunnel. So it was a massive cock-up for me, Bryce. And then once the play was restarted, we had the old tissue toilet roll thrown on, which is great to watch, by the way, but obviously delays the game even more. And then right at the end, Blazers scored another after he was given the ball from a horrendous pass from the goalkeeper, from the Freiburg keeper, whose name I'm not even going to try and pronounce because I always get it wrong, so I'm not even going to bother. And it was a pass to the outside of the boot, and he received it and shot into an open goal and hit the post, but it just crept in. So it was a very strange game, Bryce. If you missed it, or if anybody who's listening missed it, they only need to look at 2 things. That's the halftime incident with VAR, and then they need to look at the last minute for the goal.
Yeah, absolutely incredible, eh? What drama. VAR, it's given us plenty to talk about, hasn't it, in the last year or so. But, Manu, if we look at that end of the table, Mainz leapfrog Freiburg, getting them into 15th position and leaving Freiburg in that relegation playoff spot. Which side do you see possibly finishing there? I mean, Wolfsburg are also joined on points. All three sides have 30. Unfortunately, Freiburg's goal difference is somewhat more abysmal.
Oh, that's you asking me who's going to finish in 16th. And those three teams are even on 30 points. Let's postpone that question to after match day 34, shall we?
Yeah, you're just hoping that then I forget, don't you?
It's just, I mean, those three sides have been, I think, to be quite frank, I think Freiburg deserves it the least because of obviously the way Streich has been playing, the way that they always play positive football, and it's a club that does a lot of things right. And when they stay in the league, they have done a lot of things right because of their small budget. They're the club with the smallest budget in the league, right? So I think they're the side that deserves it the least, and they're the side that is probably also the most adapted being down there. I mean, we've talked countless times about the fantastic work that Christian Streich has done there with this team. The fact that, that they're able to cope with players leaving the Breisgau Brasilianer year in and year out, and they are always able to stay competitive. And the other thing is too, Bryce, I think of the three sides, they have the least amount of pressure because, as Chris said last week, they're a top 25 team in German football rather than a top 18 team, right? For them, going down is not the end of the world. Heck, they won't even fire Streich. They will just continue as business as usual. And I think that is actually something that will really help you in the relegation battle because, for Wolfsburg, I mean, that club is a disaster. They are fittingly, I mean, they are sponsored by Volkswagen or owned by Volkswagen. They are the diesel affair of German football. I mean, they are just an absolute disaster at every end, everywhere you look. The money that has been wasted on this side is just mind-boggling. I mean, this is worthy of a Netflix documentary, in my opinion. That's how bad it is. So I think they maybe, because of that, deserve it the most. And Mainz hasn't been really that positive of a story this year either. For years, they were a positive club, but there's so much intrigue going on at the upper echelons of the club that, they don't really deserve it either. So if you go by that, I would rather not have Freiburg in that position.
Yeah, bit of a close one to call, this, isn't it? I mean, each side, when you do look at the fixtures remaining, do have some tricky games in there. I don't know what way it's going to end. Chris, any thoughts as to who might be in the playoff relegation game?
Oh, I think it could be Wolfsburg again, and I say that with half a hope, and the half a hope is because the food they do in the media area is unbelievable. And Manu and I are both in Germany at that time, and we should both get accredited for that match. And we will be eating some of the fantastic sandwiches and currywurst that you can get in the whole of Germany. And I also need to go to the Volkswagen Museum, Bryce. I've been to Wolfsburg twice, and I've got there too late for the Volkswagen Museum. So third time's a charm for me. So I'm hoping it's Wolfsburg.
Wow. Well, that maybe wasn't the answer that...
See, that's based on food and cars, I'm afraid, Bryce. So, I mean, it's so tight, isn't it? It could be anybody. But as Manu said, I think Freiburg have got that... they've got no pressure. If they go down, so what? So when you can play like that, that's quite good. Although they lost, obviously, a crucial game today. Mainz a hit and miss, Wolfsburg a hit and miss. So, I mean, we could see the next 3 match days that... those three clubs just top and tail each other, maybe even stay on the same points. You never know. But if you're asking me who I'd like to see in there, purely for because I love a decent currywurst, it would be Wolfsburg.
And that's what swayed it, eh? But then, guys, let's talk about who could possibly be going up. We look at Dusseldorf looking in a good position. They're in obviously the top position in Bundesliga 2, 53 points. We've got Nuremberg then sitting in the second position, 51. And then we've got Holstein Kiel 49. There's a bit of a drop after that, but there's still plenty to play for here. And then I suppose the next question is, which I asked before, is there a possibility of third beating the Bundesliga sides and going up? Manu, if we go to you, we mentioned previously that Kiel, they've just been promoted to Bundesliga 2. This is going to be a massive ask for them to go play a Bundesliga side and go up. But what if they were to finish second? Would Nuremberg possibly stand a better chance?
Yeah, I think so. But I am not sure that's actually going to happen, Bryce, because I alluded to that already last week, but it looks like that Anfang, the Kiel head coach, is going to take the Köln job. So, I mean, we're talking about coaches moving from Club A to B. That's a big one, and that could distract them till the end of the season. But yeah, I think Nuremberg would be better suited for that relegation playoff match. And let's say it is Freiburg, for example, then I think it would be a 50-50. Wolfsburg, a bit more difficult, of course, but also perhaps doable for them. But I think that Düsseldorf and Nuremberg are going to finish first and second, to be quite honest, and I think it's going to be Holstein Kiel in that third spot, and that's going to be a very big ask for them to as a freshly promoted side, to play that relegation playoff and to possibly go up is going to be very difficult for them.
Yes, it is, but with 2 points separating the sides, Chris, do you want to guess who's playing next Monday night?
Well, no, not really, because I don't like Monday night football, Bryce.
Well, Kiel are playing Nuremberg. So
well, there we go then. There we go. So, I mean, there's a 6-pointer, if you want to call it that, straight away. I'm with the thought that if Kiel were to finish third, it would be too much of a big ask. Maybe just keep an eye on Ingolstadt with 4 games left to play. 5 points behind, 6 points behind.
No, please not.
Really? You believe it, Chris?
No, I just dropped that in because I knew what Manu's response would be.
Oh dear. Well, you never know, but no, not for me.
I don't want another
not for Manu.
No, not another car park in the Bundesliga. Only if Wolfsburg go down. Oh,
only if Wolfsburg go down, eh? Well, Chris will be gutted, won't he? But guys, I think that more or less does it for this week. I think we've managed to cover a lot. As always, we've talked plenty about coaches, but we've also talked about European spots and relegation spots. There's still a lot going on this week, including the Pokal games as well. So it's coming to the end of the season. Some positions have been decided, but there's still plenty to play for. Chris, I know it's late on this Monday night, but what would you like to draw people's attention to just before we wrap things up?
Obviously, have a look at Manu's Pokal previews, and then keep your eye on Football Stat for any post-match stuff. I've trying to get accreditation for the Champions League, both legs, so that'll be very good for Liverpool, hasten to add, and we'll wait and see how that goes. Obviously, the run-up to European games next week, massive game for us as a network, with Bayern Munich taking on Real Madrid, so keep your eyes on lots of stuff for that, and that'll be on Football Grad Live.
Yes, indeed. We'll be talking about that plenty as it comes up next week. So we're going to, I would imagine, preview all of those games. Very exciting draw indeed. But Manu, what have you got going on this week? You're obviously back in Germany, but what would you like to draw people's attention to?
I'm flying to Paris the day after. Well, by the time this podcast comes out, the next day, on Wednesday, and then I'm giving a talk on the politics and football in Russia at the Paris Nanterre University. That will be on Thursday, and if you are in Paris, go ahead and visit it. I'm going to talk about soft power, football, politics, the influence of the state. There will be a bit about PSG as well, because they're very much in that kind of sphere of influence as well. So if that interests you, that will be at Paris Nanterre. I've tweeted it out as well. You can find the schedule on my Twitter account at Manuel Veth. And there will probably be something coming at Football Grad Live as well on footballgrad.com. Something related to that topic, if that's interested you. And then of course Chris pointed out It's the closing stages of the season. We have the cup, the semifinals, so that's going to be covered this week as well. And then, of course, the Champions League and trying to get accreditation for the semifinals. Try to maybe catch one of the away games, not the next week, but the week after that. So yeah, lots of exciting things happening all around. And of course, I'm looking forward to some sleep, to be quite frank, Bryce.
Yes, indeed. We've got plenty going on across the Football Grad network. That is, whether you need sleep or whether you'd like to stay up reading a few more articles and reports that we have, because you can sleep for whatever reason, maybe jet lag, then definitely head over to @FootballGrad Live on Twitter. There's loads of content, which is fantastic. Good work, guys. That more or less does it for this week. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please head over to the likes of iTunes or wherever else you get it from, and just give us some positive feedback. We really appreciate that. And as always, we welcome interaction. You'll get in touch with us on Twitter or any of the other platforms if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to discuss. But I think Chris is ready for bed. I think Manu's just about still holding his words together and needs to get to bed, especially ahead of another flight tomorrow. And well, I've got work as always in the morning. So with that, I think we're going to bid you farewell and say Auf Wiedersehen.
Ich wart seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen, ich hab zu holen.
One gift that never gets returned? Trick question. It's 3 gifts: beer, wine, and spirits. And with Drizzly, you can send the gift of drinks right to your loved one's doors. Drizzly lets you compare prices from local liquor stores on a huge selection of beer, wine, and holiday spirits, then get them delivered right to that lucky someone's door in under 60 minutes. And right now, Drizzly is giving customers $5 off their first order. Just enter promo code JINGLE at checkout. Download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.